Just going to brief you about this recent study which we have conducted and published recently in the Indian Journal of Endocrinology Metabolism. This was a 8-city study to look at what is the prevalence of hypothyroidism across the country. And what we have found is that the prevalence of hypothyroidism was to the extent of 10.95% across the country, across all these 8 cities. And out of this, about 3.47% of them were not aware of the disease. Out of these 10.95%, what we found was that almost close to 4% of these patients did not know that they had hypothyroidism. So one third of the patients don't know that they have hypothyroidism when they are actually suffering from this problem. And the other issue that came out was that almost 8% of patients had subclinical hypothyroidism or a mild hypothyroidism. Subclinical hypothyroidism is a mild form of hypothyroidism which may not require treatment in many situations, but it does require treatment in women who are planning to conceive and women who are pregnant. During that situation, if they are found to have subclinical hypothyroidism, they need treatment. And also in some other situations also they may require treatment. And all these people with subclinical hypothyroidism have a tendency to develop hypothyroidism over the period of time. So this is what we found in this study. And apart from that, if you look at the distribution of thyroid problems amongst males and females, we find that 15% of the females had this problem, and as compared to only 5% of the males. So this problem is clearly more common in females, and it because it does influence several aspects of reproductive function in females. Then the second aspect that we would like to highlight is that the age group in which it was seen more commonly was in the age group of 40 to 60, and more precisely 46 to 52 years was the age band in which it was the prevalence was highest. So I think the idea of this study was to highlight that the prevalence of thyroid problems is increasing, and a lot of people do not know about this problem, and there is need to increase the awareness amongst the general public and also amongst the doctors who treat patients with various problems. All along speaking about hypothyroidism, because that's more common. Hyperthyroidism is less common. It probably affects about 1% of the population. That's general understanding. And what it causes is that here the person is losing weight, he's anxious, he's nervous, he's having palpitations, he's having a lot of sweating. So these are patients who sort of present with hyperthyroidism, and they're also once again if left untreated, they can have significant problems. And hyperthyroidism is generally more symptomatic, and people do identify people with they're more easily identified as compared to hypothyroidism. What we found was that in our study that the prevalence was almost equivalent across all the 8 cities. In Hyderabad, what we found was that the prevalence was 8.8% amongst this in this survey, and which is close to the national average. National average was 10.95%, and the national average and also the prevalence of untreated hypothyroidism also came out almost similar in most of the cities, that is 3.9 or about 4.5% in Hyderabad. So very close amongst all the cities, and showing that about one third of patients on the average do not know about their problem. Important issue is that once we know that these problems are common, how do we screen individuals who we think are need to be screened? The simplest test is to do a TSH test, which is now available across the country. In most places it is available, and a simple test like the TSH can help us in giving us an indication of thyroid dysfunction. In some patients, however, we require further tests like doing the T3 and T4 or the free thyroid hormones may need to be done, but by and large the TSH helps in, say, more than 90% of the patients, helps in coming to a conclusion about the thyroid function. The treatment of hypothyroidism is quite simple, in the sense that we require to replace adequate quantity of thyroid hormone, and so that replacement has to be done by use of tablets which are available. The thyroxine tablets are available, which are taken on an empty stomach. The dose required may depend on the weight of the individual, and also depending on other factors like his his absorption potential, and other factors may influence. But by and large, what is said is that most people with hypothyroidism require about 1.5 microgram per kg body weight of this tablet. So it can be easily supplement. The message is that it can be easily given as a small tablet, which is to be taken once a day only, and which does not require does not require very frequent adjustment of the dose or etc. So once the dose is adjusted, it remains the same for several months or several years. Coming to the effect of thyroid disorders on pregnancy, what we find is that there is a need for screening every pregnant woman for the thyroid dysfunction. They need to have this test early in pregnancy, and once we do this, we may identify women who have got hypothyroidism, who did not have hypothyroidism earlier, may be identified to have this problem during pregnancy, and they require supplementation. And there again, the target levels are also a little different. They require to maintain the TSH within the particular target range. So therefore, there is a significant, important need to screen all pregnant women during pregnancy for thyroid dysfunction. We had to, in any epidemiological study, it is difficult to carry out a large scale epidemiological study. And second thing is that there will always be some sort of bias. You can always say that this was not done or that was not done, but we have to try to get information which is representative, which indicates that this which gives a picture of what the population problem are with in the population. So for this reason, we have what we have done is that we have advertised. We have done this through camps. We conducted camps in specific locations of the city, and we distributed pamphlets to everybody about this camp being conducted. And these were not publicized as thyroid camps, because we did not want only people who have got thyroid disease to come, because otherwise other people would not come, and only people who have got a thyroid problem or known thyroid problem would come. Called all strata of the public. We called from all those above the age of 18 years. We called them irrespective of any of their problems, any of their previous problems, and they were asked to come, and they came fasting, and they had a thyroid test along with other tests like the lipid profile and a blood sugar was also done, and after taking a detailed history of their problems and all that. So this was how this was done. And if you look at the data from Hyderabad particularly, you will see that, or in fact even the general data from across the country, we find that the prevalence of diabetes is about 15%, which is actually truly reflecting the prevalence of diabetes. So showing that it was not a bias, in the sense that if you otherwise have a bias in conducting a study, you would have say 50% of patients having diabetes. So that was not the case here. So showing that the prevalence of other problems, if you look at other conditions in the population, you find it as good as in the general population, showing that this population was representative of the general population. Challenges that are there in any study of this kind are that you need to sort of motivate people to come, and then because they are not having any problem, because when somebody has a problem, he will definitely come to the doctor. He will spend time, even if he has to spend 2 or 3 hours waiting, he may do that. But a person who does not have any problem, who is otherwise normal, would not like to come and spend so much time. So that was a challenge in getting everybody to come, and also trying to see that they have a minimum waiting time, so that they can go back soon, and we can do all these procedures in the minimum time required. So we had trained staff to do that. We had at every center we had enough staff who were adequately trained to take the history properly and take all the details regarding their height, weight, and other assessments, and then their blood samples were drawn, so that they could finish this with minimum waiting time that is required at the center. Factors, certain components in the diet can have an effect on the thyroid function, like high salt intake in some parts of the world. We have seen very high prevalence of thyroid problems in some situations, some countries where people take a lot of high seafood, and but those are all anecdotal. We cannot generalize that as of now. But this is just to say that there are several dietary factors, and we have not studied that in detail. Maybe in a subsequent study we will look more carefully at all these dietary factors, and maybe come out with further information on what factors actually may influence the development of thyroid disorders. Thyroid problems can present with varied manifestations and therefore it is important that we all are aware of these manifestations, and we screen people, because screening is easy, is not difficult nowadays. And once we identify that somebody has a thyroid dysfunction or thyroid problem, he needs to be treated adequately. And once we treat it is not difficult to treat them also, and once we treat them adequately, we are protecting them from problems that otherwise happen in untreated hypothyroidism.